It was just another busy evening at one of the most popular restaurants in town. The lights were warm, the music was soft, and the scent of fresh food filled the air. A well-dressed man in an expensive suit stepped through the doors like he owned the place. You could tell by the way he walked and talked. He was used to being in control, used to getting what he wanted. He looked around the room with a smug expression, clearly unimpressed, and waited only seconds before calling over the waitress with a snap of his fingers. She came over with a calm smile, wearing a simple uniform and holding a notepad. "Good evening, sir. Welcome. Can I get you started with something to drink?" But instead of a polite reply, he scoffed, looked her up and down, and muttered under his breath about the service these days. Loud enough for people nearby to hear, but just quiet enough to pretend it was nothing. He made jokes about her appearance, her accent, and even questioned if she was qualified to be working in a place like this. The other guests looked uncomfortable, but she didn't flinch. No raised voice, no argument, just that same calm smile. She nodded, took his order, and walked away. But what the man didn't know, what he was about to find out, was that the woman he just belittled wasn't just a waitress. She was the owner of the entire restaurant, and the moment he realized who she really was, everything changed. His confidence, gone. His arrogance, shattered. And what happened next? Let's just say Karma had a reservation that night, and it was right on time. As he waited for his food, the wealthy man leaned back in his chair, scrolling through his phone, completely unaware of the quiet glances around him. Some of the staff exchanged looks, but no one said a word. This wasn't the first time someone like him had walked in with a pocket full of money and an ego to match. But there was something different about tonight, something brewing just beneath the surface. Back in the kitchen, the so-called waitress was reviewing orders and checking with her chefs. Her name was Maya, a hard-working, self-made woman who had built this restaurant from the ground up. What started as a tiny food truck had, over the years, turned into one of the top-rated spots in the city. Locals knew her story, how she had faced rejection, discrimination, and countless sleepless nights to make her dream real. But to strangers like the man at table 9, she was just another face in a uniform. Maya didn't care about fancy titles or showing off. She believed in treating people with kindness, no matter who they were. But she also believed in standing up when the time was right. And tonight, that time was getting close. Out on the floor, the man grew restless. He waved down another server, demanding to know why his meal was taking so long. His voice carried again, sharp and dismissive. "I've been waiting too long. Does anyone here know how to run a business?" That was it. Maya wiped her hands, straightened her posture, and stepped out of the kitchen. She walked slowly toward his table, each step measured. The room got a little quieter. People sensed something was about to happen. The man looked up, confused at first, until she spoke. Maya stood at the edge of the man's table, her eyes calm but steady. "Is there a problem with your service, sir?" she asked, her tone polite but firm. The man blinked, surprised to see her again. "Didn't I already speak to you?" he said, brushing her off with a wave of his hand. "I asked to speak with someone in charge." A few people nearby turned their heads, pretending not to listen but clearly tuned in. Maya didn't flinch. "You are," she replied. "I'm the owner of this restaurant." The words hung in the air like a pin dropping in a quiet room. The man's smirk faded for a second, just a second, before he chuckled. "Really, you? That's cute," he said, not even trying to hide the doubt in his voice. "Well, maybe you should spend less time playing dress-up and more time training your staff." Maya didn't respond right away. Instead, she glanced around the dining room, locking eyes with her team. Servers, cooks, hosts, all watching quietly. These were people who knew her story. People who respected her not just as a boss, but as someone who had never forgotten where she came from. Meanwhile, in the back corner, an elderly couple who'd been coming to the restaurant for years whispered to each other, remembering how Maya used to serve every table herself. At another table, A young woman on a date looked down at her plate, visibly uncomfortable with the way the man was speaking. And yet, he kept going. I've invested in bigger places than this. I know what success looks like, he said, crossing his arms. And this is average at best. Maya took a breath. She wasn't here to argue, but she had something to show him, something he wasn't expecting, and she wasn't going to hold back. Maya didn't blink. She stood her ground, not raising her voice, not backing down. Success doesn't always wear a suit, she said quietly, her words landing heavier than if she'd shouted. The man laughed again, but it was forced now. He looked around, noticing the stares from nearby tables. The confidence he walked in with was slowly slipping. Billy tried to hold on to it. Look, he said, lowering his voice, you clearly take this little place seriously. That's nice. But let's be honest, you're just a waitress playing business owner. This isn't the kind of restaurant real investors notice. Maya smiled then, but it wasn't the smile he'd seen before. It was sharper. Funny, she said, because last week, we turned down a major investor who offered to franchise its restaurant nationwide. And before that, we were featured in a national food magazine. But you're right, maybe we're not your kind of successful. His face twitched, just for a second, but Maya wasn't done. Tell me, she added, tilting her head slightly, when was the last time you built something from nothing? No connections, no silver spoon, just grit. The man didn't answer. He looked down, fiddling with his watch, then his phone, pretending to check messages. The tension in the room was thick. Customers weren't eating. Staff stood frozen at their posts. It wasn't just about food anymore. This was about dignity, about pride, about respect. And then, just when it felt like the moment might pass, Maya reached into her apron and pulled out something small, an old photograph. She placed it gently on the table. It showed her standing beside the food truck, years ago, smiling in the rain. This is my first day in business, she said softly. That truck, parked across the street from your office building. He looked at the photo, his eyes narrowed. Now he remembered. He stared at the photo for a long second, the corners of his mouth tightening. That old food truck. He remembered walking past it nearly every day, never paying it much attention, just another small-time vendor he had fought. Some days he even complained about it being parked too close to the curb. He never imagined the woman running it would be the same one standing in front of him now, owning the restaurant he had just insulted. Maya could see the recognition in his face, but she didn't say anything more. She didn't have to. All around them, the room was still. No plates clinking, no conversations humming, just a quiet, building tension that hung over every table. Even the servers, still holding trays, watched from the sidelines, their eyes darting between Maya and the man. Some of them had started their careers in that same truck with her. They knew what it took to get here. The man shifted uncomfortably in his chair. He looked at the photo again, then back at Maya. So what? He finally muttered, though his voice lacked the sharpness it had earlier. It's just a restaurant. Anyone can cook. Doesn't mean you're special. But now, it wasn't just Maya's story anymore. A voice from across the room called out. She gave me my first job when no one else would, said one of the kitchen staff, quietly stepping forward. Another spoke up. She helped my mom pay rent when we were about to lose our home. More voices followed. Customers, employees, even a delivery guy who happened to be dropping off supplies. All sharing small pieces of how Maya had helped them, lifted them, believed in them. The man sat frozen, looking around as more people stood, their words stacking like bricks, forming something unshakable. And then, just before Maya could speak again, the restaurant doors opened. Everyone turned. And what happened next would change everything. The doors swung open with a gust of cool air, and in walked a sharply dressed woman holding a sleek leather folder, her heels clicking against the floor. Her presence immediately drew attention, not just because of how confidently she walked, but because she looked like someone who wasn't here for dinner. She scanned the room briefly, her eyes landing on Maya, then the man at the table. The man's face went pale. He knew her. "Vanessa," he said, standing up halfway. "What are you doing here?" She didn't respond right away. Instead, she walked directly to Maya and extended her hand. "Maya Grant?" she asked, her tone professional but warm. Maya nodded, cautious. "I'm with the city's Small Business Investment Council. We've been reviewing your recent expansion proposal." Now all eyes were truly locked in. "I didn't expect to find you in the middle of a shift," Vanessa continued, smiling a little, "but I had a few questions and figured I'd stop by in person. This is one of the top-reviewed restaurants on our list. We're considering you for a feature in our National Entrepreneur Spotlight." The man swallowed hard. This couldn't be real. Vanessa then turned to him, her tone shifting. "I didn't realize you were already here, Charles. Funny, I remember you saying this place didn't meet investment standards." A few people stifled laughter. Maya remained composed, though her eyes were sharp. She could feel the shift in the room again, but it wasn't over yet. Charles stepped back, trying to recover, but Vanessa wasn't finished. "You rejected this restaurant last quarter without even reviewing the full proposal. And now, here you are." The silence was thick again, but this time it pulsed with anticipation. And just as Charles opened his mouth to speak, Vanessa pulled out a document from her folder, something that made Maya's eyes widen, something that could change the future of the restaurant or take it all away. Vanessa laid the document flat on the table, right in front of Maya. "This," she said clearly, "is a pre-approval letter for a grant worth $250,000. It's part of a new program supporting minority-owned businesses expanding into underserved neighborhoods." The room fell completely silent. "We've been watching your restaurant for months, Maya. Your leadership, your reviews, your impact on the community, it all speaks for itself." Maya stared at the paper, stunned. She had applied months ago, not knowing if it would go anywhere. Now it was real, right in front of her. She slowly reached for it, her hand almost shaking. Charles looked like he'd been punched in the gut. "Wait a minute," he said, stepping forward. "This funding, it was supposed to go to my client's project on the East End." Vanessa didn't even look at him. "It was. Until we found out your client had been buying out small businesses and flipping the properties for luxury rentals. That's not development. That's displacement." Maya looked at him now, her voice calm but strong. "You walked into this place thinking I was beneath you, that I didn't belong in this room. But the truth is, you've been sitting at a table I built from scratch." The entire restaurant seemed to breathe again, claps quietly breaking out, a few cheers from the back. Maya nodded once and took the paper. "Thank you," she told Vanessa, still steady. But just as things felt like they had come full circle, Vanessa glanced down at her folder again. "There's one more thing," she said, pausing. "Charles, the restaurant across the street from your office. The one you thought was yours to buy out next week. It's already under contract." Maya looked at her. Vanessa smiled. "She bought it yesterday." Charles didn't say a word. His mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. The confidence, the smugness, gone. He stood there, staring at Maya like he was seeing her for the first time. Around them, quiet applause turned into real celebration. Staff, customers, even the delivery driver smiled and clapped, not just for the grant or the second location, but for the message behind it all. Maya didn't gloat. She didn't need to. She simply looked at Charles and said, "Next time you walk into a place, don't assume you know someone's story." He nodded slowly, awkwardly adjusting his suit before turning and walking out the door. No big scene, no final words, just a quiet exit, leaving behind everything he thought he understood about power and success. Back in the kitchen, her team gathered around, full of hugs and high fives. They'd been with her since the beginning, some since the food truck, others joining as the restaurant grew. Now they weren't just celebrating her. They were celebrating what they all built together. Later that evening, Maya stood near the window, looking across the street at the little property she now owned. Another dream in the making, not for prestige, not for status, but for the community. A space where people felt seen, welcomed, and respected. She turned back to her restaurant, the tables now full again, the laughter and music back in the air. This wasn't just about a wealthy man insulting a black waitress. It was about identity, strength, and not letting others define your worth. It was about rising with grace, even when challenged. And as Maya walked through her restaurant, checking on guests and smiling with her staff, one thing was clear: real success isn't loud, it's lived, and hers was just getting started.